Okay, so let's go ahead now and start turning some of these on. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this AO and I'm just going to put it actually above the render and below the shadow. So we've got shadow. I know this is very confusing and I know I've moved them around several times, but we're at shadow, AO, render. We've already done what we need to do with our depth pass. We've copied it into the render. All right, so we can just leave that off. We don't need it. Our mask, we've already used that to cut around the background, so we don't need that. Okay, so we can leave that off. Let's turn on our BPR render. Okay, and there we go. Let's turn this off so you can see this is what we have. So let's turn on, now let's select our ambient occlusion and turn it on. Okay, and now you can see we have access to this stuff right here. So I'm going to go from normal and let's go ahead and try screen. I like to try different things in here to see which one works best. I try lighten, that doesn't work. Let's try multiply. Ah, there we go. All right, so now here on the opacity, if I just click on opacity and drag from 100% to 0%, and if you look at the image, you can see we're getting a little bit out of that. Okay, you can see I drag this over. All right. So you can find the sweet spot in there. All right, let's put it at, say, I don't know, around 70, 69, something like that. Okay. Now we're going to click on the shadow and turn that on right here. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing. Let's come up here to where it says normal and turn on multiply. And you can see now that is added to it. Let's take the opacity down to 0. And you can see we're getting a little bit from there. All right. So again, you want to dial in sort of the sweet spot, find a nice middle ground somewhere. Okay. Something like that maybe. Okay. All right. So the only thing we have left to do now really is add a background right down here. You can see we've got this white background, but let's add something a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on this icon right here to create a brand new layer. And let's click and bring this all the way down. Okay, I'll just put it above the background right there. Oops, where'd it go? Oh, let's try it here. Grab it down here. And I'll just put it above the background. There we go, right there. All right, so with that layer selected, if I go ahead and find an image now, so I can come in here and I've got a folder myself here of textures. So you'll have to find some kind of texture image that you want to put in the background. We'll just put this blue dream in there. Okay. So if I just click on that and drag it in right here, there you go. You can see that's loaded up. And because it is below these other images, it's behind our model. And because we use the mask and we cut around everything, we we're able to see the background here because we cut out the mask. Okay. So I'm just going to pull this up a little bit right here. Pull this in. Maybe pull this down. Okay. And then hit enter. There we go. All right. So now we've got a fairly pleasing image. For all intents and purposes, we are done. This is all we need to do. But we can do. There's a lot more that we can do with this. Let's go ahead and select all of our images here. We can just leave the background. Tell you what, I'm going to unlock the background and then I'm just going to delete it. We don't need that. So these are all of our layers here. I'm going to select the first one, shift select the last one, so they're all selected. Right click on it and merge layers. All right, so they're all merged down right here. We can just go ahead and call this, double click on it, and we'll call this Ogre Render. Okay, hit enter. There we go. All right, and now one more thing we can do, because we did do the depth pass on here. If we come up to filter and come over to blur, you can see we can come down here now to lens blur. Now let's click on this. All right, and here's our image. And with lens blur now, we can, if you just click on an area, you should be able to, it doesn't always seem to want to work. So what we can do is the blur focal distance. If we, before I get that far, one more thing you need to double check is right here where it says source. You want to click on this and make sure that you choose the Alpha 1 that we pasted into our, remember we pasted the depth channel into our render image. It was called Alpha 1. So you want to make sure that's selected. And then right here on the blur focal distance, if you start dragging that and look at the image, you'll start to see that it'll start to come into focus right there. Okay. So I want that area right there around the eyes and nose to be in focus. And I'm going to take this radius, and now this will determine the amount of blur. All right. So as I bring this over to the right, you can see it's getting blurrier and blurrier around the edges. So I just really want the eyes and nose area to be in focus. So I'm just playing around between the focal distance and the radius. Okay. And once you find the sort of sweet spot you want to be at, go ahead and hit OK. And there you go. So we've got a nice little bit of blur around some of the stuff that's furthest from the camera, all right? And stuff that's closest to the camera is in focus. Okay? So that's the basics of taking a painted model in ZBrush and doing a ZBrush render and bringing it over to Photoshop and comping it in the most simplest way. Okay? Now, remember, there is a lot more that we can do with this, and in upcoming videos, I will show you more that we can do. But for now, this is the very basics, and this helps you to get a pretty decent image out of ZBrush without having to go into Maya and do a RenderMan or Arnold render. All right, this is a nice way to show this off to an art director or producer or a client or even mom and dad. Okay? If you have any questions on this, please don't hesitate to contact me. All right? Thank you.